Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Football-Oranje podcast, your home of Dutch football. Michael Statham, I'm joined by Mike Bell. And whilst we've both been very busy, especially Mike, with Football-Oranje recently, we haven't done a podcast in a while, so it's time to have a catch-up. Talk about the Eredivisie. The title race has been very exciting. Feyenoord are still top. We've got some Netherlands international clubs to talk about. There's still a good month away till the next Netherlands squad's announced. First one of Roel Koeman. But there are some players that really taken our eye recently. And Dutch teams in Europe as well. Always a good discussion to have. And Mike, how are you? How are you enjoying the title race? We've seen final two Ajax have won this weekend, final 5 points clear at the top, and then Ajax won. And it looks like now could be Feyenoord and Ajax, couldn't it? Maybe it's the main two going for the title.
Yeah, I think it was shaping up to be a very good title race. I thought that a couple of weeks ago we looked at maybe 5 teams being in it, but yeah, I think that as the season goes on, in the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to see a bit more of a shift towards it being really a two-horse race between Feyenoord and Ajax. And yeah, I think it's going to be tight going towards the end of the season. I think that Ajax looked like they were drifting. Well, by the last time we did a podcast, we're probably talking about how bad they were. But now Schroeder's gone and Heitinga's in, then it's all seemed to turn around. Eredivisie wise, anyway. I think we'll talk about them in Europe later on. But in terms of Eredivisie, I think he's got them playing well again and they're picking up wins. And it's just amazing what happens when you play the right players in the right positions and you get results. I mean, it's not that hard, is it, Mr. Schroeder?
No, indeed. We'll touch upon Ajax, of course, a little later in this episode. Just let everyone know, of course, if you've got your own opinion of the title race, maybe you're a fanatic Ajax or Feyenoord supporter, or maybe another Dutch football supporter, and you think you know who's going to win the title race, do get involved in the YouTube comments or on Twitter. Let us know who you think will be the winners come May. This is on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes, of course. The comments on YouTube are usually written with what you think will happen. So let's talk first about Feyenoord. It feels like they've had so many late goals going lately, and it's kept them on top. It's got a little cushion now, just above Ajax, of 3 points, which isn't, of course, a lot. But it's given them confidence that this is going to be a special season for them. And that's the mentality you seem to feel when they're getting these late goals. They're into Kalp. It's a great atmosphere. I was thinking yesterday when Feyenoord beat RZ that if you put RZ's front three in place of Feyenoord's front three, I think those three players get into the final team. But apart from that, I think you'd pick predominantly Feyenoord players. But if Feyenoord just had a one or two extra quality, a striker, a winger, that was a key player for them. They'd have extra goals in their team, and they wouldn't need this scrapping for late goals. And this title race would be a little bit more comfortable for them. A little bit of luck has come their way, of course, but you do make your own luck. Fair play to them. Arne Slot has got them having a fantastic season. But there's much more to come from them as well, in Europe as well, still in the Cup. But yeah, what do you think about that, Mike? That they're just missing a quality player or two in attack.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think that you look in the summer, they brought in Jimenez and Danilo, and I think that Slot keeps rotating them because he's not sure which one
No.
is his best striker. Not one has really convinced so far. So they've chipped in with goals. They've got goals so far this season, but I don't think that either of them could be really happy with the season they've had so far. And then you look at the wings. Johan Bakash has come good recently, but then you've got Dilrosun, who's a bit up and down with his performances. Pac Xiao, the Brazilian, he's still young. He's looks good from what we've seen of him. But then you've got someone like Idrissi, who again is very hit and miss. I think that their attack, if it was as what's the word? If it was as consistent as their defense and their midfield has been, then yeah, they would be a lot more comfortable in this title race. But I still think that they look good. They've got the character, they've got the fighting spirit. They showed that even without a key player yesterday, like Kochu or Bio, they were still able to beat the second place team in AZ. So it bodes well that they have the players in reserve to come in, and they still put in performances to grind out wins. So that's where you need to be winning the title. And yeah, now it's just a case of them picking up those wins, grinding them out, and then staying ahead of Ajax. But next month, I think it's a month today. I think it's on the 19th of March. is the big one. You know, Ajax Feyenoord in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
That's looking like that could be the big game between now and the end of the season to really see if Feyenoord have it. If they go to Amsterdam and come away with a point or a win, then yeah, you don't really see anything stopping them between now and the end of the season.
And what of RZ? They were top of the table if they won that game, and it would have been a very different picture for them this weekend. Now it looks like they could. I mean, I'm saying could very tentatively there, but they could just be in a battle for third, fourth, avoiding the playoffs almost from 22. But such a good team on their day, but it feels like they don't have enough of those really good days. Someone like Jesper Karlsson hasn't been consistent enough recently. I've written actually my predictions article on the website that I just feel like he goes invisible when he's not mentally right. It's like you can tell when he's in the mood to play really well, and you can tell when he's not quite on his game that day, which wasn't really the case for him before he was motivated, was a key player for RZ. Now there's no one really breathing down his neck to take his place in the team. Van Breda is talent, gets some minutes, but RZ have got 14 players probably that get good game minutes, and then there's a lot of young players around that. So you don't really have that pressure, do you, of losing your spot in the team. It also means with the European games coming up, this squad's going to get very tired soon, and they're going to drop more points. We've seen already in the home games. They struggle to break down deep defences. Do you think this is the title race? Not over, but do you think this is like a sign of what could be to come from them? And maybe something we thought possibly was coming anyway from this team. We never really held RZ that high in our estimations. The start of the season, that you in particular, me too, though, I suppose. We both thought Pascal Janssen, he's not a great coach. He's missing some players again this season. And then they have surprised us. But it just felt like now we know what's coming and they're going to sort of drift away a little.
Yeah, I mean, they proved me wrong because at the start of the season I was very down on our chances, and I thought they've been excellent so far. But the reason I was down on them, apart from Pascal Janssen, was the fact that I didn't think their squad was good enough to compete at the top. And if you lost one or two players, then they do become a lot weaker. And yeah, when you look at the bench yesterday, the players that they're bringing on, you know, the first substitution that they made was the left back got changed, and in midfield they've got a couple of youngsters on the bench, and Mihailovic should have signed in January, but hasn't really convinced yet. You know, they brought him in. I think there's a big excitement about him coming in, and they paid quite a lot of money for him, but I don't think he's hit the heights yet. And then up front, if they take off a striker, who have they got? You know, they've got Yusuf Barassi on the bench. I mean, they've not exactly got that backup that's going to come on and score goals. I think that they're struggling with injuries. You know, you got Bruno Martins Indy out. I mean, you're having to play, you know, Wouter Gauss, the 18-year-old in centre defence. And they're missing Danny De Witt as well, who's an important player for them. But yeah, I think that AZ have had an excellent year so far, but their squad isn't good enough to win the title for me. I think that they are going to finish around the third, fourth mark. I think that it's between them and PSV for third. And I think that AZ have a great chance of finishing third because PSV just looks so inconsistent at the moment. So yeah, I think that the best they can aim for really is third, which is a good campaign. If they can go all the way to the end and put up a fight for the top two, that's so good. But I think they should be looking at the Europa Conference League as something that they can win, and they can go really far in that competition. So I think their mind might drift a little to that if they drop further and further behind Feyenoord.
Yeah, it's teams in Europe, Dutch teams in Europe. It has to suit the team and the campaign they're having in the league, doesn't it? In a way, and unless you've got a really deep squad, being in the Netherlands, you can only really put your efforts into one area. And Dutch teams at the moment, a lot of them are going for the league. And for RZ, if they can almost put that to one side soon, maybe they have one or two more poor results between now and when their game comes in March in the Conference League, their attention might then turn to that competition. I do genuinely think, like you might, that's a competition they can actually win. There are a couple of good teams in there. I think Villarreal are in there, West Ham are in there. West Ham are in the Premier League relegation zone. It's a team that Isaac can beat, albeit a tough one. I think Fiorentina are in there too. But Twente have already shown this season that you can get chances against a team like that. Apart from that, there are a lot of mid-tier European teams, and I think Isaac are better than a lot of them. Anyway, that's them, I think, probably in the title race now. And they have got a few good players that may well go for good money again this summer. Whilst Carlson has been inconsistent, do you think he'll get sold this summer? Pavlier's probably too. He's been there a few years now. And then Kirkez, the left back, I can't see him. Surely Ozil won't keep a hold of him. He's had a fantastic season. And I know that European teams will be chasing for him. He's so young as well, and he's playing so well. And you said about PSV there. How is it that, how can Ruud van Nistelrooy stay much longer in that job? Perhaps he'll be the end of the season. Do PSV keep the faith in him? The fact that they're fighting out with RZ and Twente to try and avoid the European playoffs. A season that promised so much and really has delivered, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think that if you look at Eredivisie as a whole this season, I think you've had Ajax until recently having probably the worst start they've had in years. You had Feyenoord at the top. You're thinking that if PSV had it together, that this would have been a great season for them to win the league, and it just hasn't worked like that. You can say that they lost Gakpo in January, which is obviously a big blow. They've lost Madueke, but Madueke hardly played at times because he was out injured. But you're just expecting a bit more from them this season, and at times they look good. I mean, against Sevilla midweek, I think they looked really good in that game for periods, but then they just fall apart defensively. I think that even against Utrecht, there's times that they look good, but then they concede silly goals, and then they drop points, and it seems to be the same for them. That out of the top three at the moment, they seem the most, or top four, they seem the most likely to end up drawing away against the team that they should be beating, or dropping points at home, because there's just something not clicking. And even with the players that they brought in, they brought in Fabio Silva, who scored a lot of goals in Belgium, hasn't really impressed in England. But why? Because if you're not going to play him as the number one striker and you're going to keep going with Luke de Jong, is he going to be happy coming on with like 20 minutes to go? Or are you going to play him on the wing? And then he's picking players like Bakayoko and Sabari. And Sabari, for me, doesn't look ready yet for this sort of football. I think he shows glimpses, but against Sevilla in midweek, I was wondering why he played so long, because he was missing chances, losing the ball a few times. And then I think you're looking at somebody like Xavi Simons to basically carry the team at times. If he doesn't do something special, then they're not going to score goals. So is it all Van Nistelrooy's fault? I don't know at the moment whether you can say that he's going to be a top quality manager. I'm leaning towards no. I think he's a name, but there's nothing that he's done so far this season. I think, he's really changed that game in PSV's favour, or he's done this that's happened, or he's really motivated his players or anything like that. It just seems that he was the man that was available in the summer, and then he just went with him. I don't know if it's worked yet. I wouldn't say he's a top class coach getting the best out of his players. So again, it's up to Marcel Brands if he wants to, or whoever comes in, if they want to decide that Van Nistelrooy's had his chance and he's not taking the most of it, then they do have to go with somebody else, because get knocked out of Europe, that's going to happen this week. I don't think they're going to turn around a 3-0 defeat in midweek. And if they finish third, even fourth, even fifth, because Twente is still in it, then you've got to look at that being a disastrous season for them.
Yeah, I think Van Nistelrooy is unfortunately just a bit of a name. Don't think he's catastrophic. I mean, as an Aston Villa fan, to bring up occasion in the podcast, having Steven Gerrard as manager, that was pretty bad in the end. But there were some promising moments. I think the character, the persona, that aura that kind of person could bring because of their life as a footballer and the confidence they have does help to a certain extent. But tactically, who's it now that Van Nistelrooy has next to him on the bench, his assistant coach?
Fred Rutten.
That's the one, Fred Rutten. That's the experienced coach, isn't it, behind this team? But if Fred Rutten was the manager, you wouldn't expect him to be pulling up many trees and PSV to be top of the table. So that's probably the person who's tactically behind it all. And you've got Van Nistelrooy's that man manager that who's steering the ship. He's got the confidence to do it, but maybe not. This sounds really kind of horrible. Maybe not brains behind it. I know that when Gerrard was manager of Villa, he didn't really have that tactical awareness, and it was one of his assistant coaches who's now the manager of Rangers that was doing all of that. You can see that how successful he is now, Michael Beale. How about players like Sobari and Bakayoko as well? They're relying upon these young players. But Sobari's 21, 22 at the end of the season. Not, fair play to him, he's getting some games to PSV, but they shouldn't be relying on a player like that if he's not going to have that promise and in the game time of getting out at the age of 21. Do you think he's ever going to be PSV level?
I think Bakayoko is showing glimpses. I think he's got something about him, but I'm still not convinced of Sabari, especially as a winger. I know it's because we've got El Ghazi and Hazard out injured, but they have to play these sort of players. But whether they're this PSV level, then I'm really not sure. And whether if they don't have somebody like El Ghazi or Hazard available, why doesn't he try and switch formation and try it with Silva up front as well? Maybe try something a little bit different and try and use the players that you have that have experience and have the quality to do something different. But it seems like the Dutch way is, we need to play 4-3-3 at PSV, and then we'll just put players there because that's the way we have to play, and we just won't change tactically. Maybe they don't have, as you said, Van Nistelrooy doesn't have the tactical nous to do something like that, and he just decides this is the way we're going to play, no changes whatsoever. But it's not working at the moment. In Seville, they fell apart against Utrecht, another 2-2 draw, which basically not ends their title hopes, but makes it very, very unlikely that they're going to catch up unless Feyenoord and Ajax keep dropping points between now and the end of the season. So, yeah, I think if you're a PSV fan at the moment, you're just frustrated because Ajax and Feyenoord are having a great season. Ajax aren't, but Ajax is still ahead of you. It shows that you're not having a good season at all. So yeah, if I was a PSV fan, losing your best players in January and then not really improving, and then not having a coach that's willing to change things, then yeah, I'd be very disappointed at the moment.
Yeah. We will be talking about one particular young Dutch player who plays PSV a little later in the show, but we need to talk about Ajax. Coming to second now. What have you made of Johnny Heitke starting as manager? I'm really keen to get your thoughts this, Mike. I've not actually spoken to you about this in particular. How Alfred Schroeder finally has left the club. I'm not an Ajax fan, but I just was quite fed up of seeing the club actually getting ruined. And I'm a fan of Dutch football. I want to see Dutch teams do really well in Europe and have the league as strong as possible. And it was just going backwards. Ten Hag's hard work's been ruined. Heitinga, though, seems to have learned a lot from Ten Hag and his presence. What do you think it brings to the table tactically, though, and with his man management? Because Ajax, all of a sudden, have started scoring goals again, haven't they?
Yeah, I think the writing was on the wall for Schroeder for ages. I mean, Ajax fans wanted him gone
for the World Cup.
Yeah, they wanted him gone from the World Cup, and then nobody made that decision, and then it kept going, and then eventually, I think it was the game against Volendam that they drew at home. They needed that to finally get rid of him. But it was performances like that for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they did absolutely nothing. You can see it was going nowhere. The players weren't listening. I mean, the story that broke they asked the players if they're unhappy with the tactics, and all of them put their hands up and stuff like that. It's just like,
how does that even get out into the media? That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And if that's going to happen to you, it's not going to be turned around. And then arguments with Daley Blind and then in the dressing room, and then he left, and yeah, it was a shambles, and they finally got rid of him. And then now you can see what's happened. The team have a bit of confidence about him. Heitinga's probably coming in and he's installed some discipline. I know that he's banned mobile phones, maybe because the players were on their phones all the time during training, and he's decided to come in, bring a bit of discipline, which I think they needed. And he's changed things a little bit tactically because, Mohamed Kudus, Ajax fans are crying out for him to be a focal point of the side. Yeah. And I think Heitinga's realised that he is the player that they sort of need in that attack to make it work. And yeah, he's been great recently for them. And moving Dusan Tadic from the wing, where he was a disaster, to through the middle has worked perfectly. And now he's scoring goals again. He's getting assists. It's just looking good again. And all it's needed is a couple of tactical tweaks and somebody to come in and basically offer that discipline that obviously Schroeder didn't have. And you would think that Ajax are probably back on the right path league-wise. I still think there's doubts about quality in this side, and I think that that's where they're falling down in Europe. I think they're missing 2 or 3 really good players. And yeah, there's a couple of players in there that I look at and like, what do you actually offer? Are you actually good enough for a side like this?
I'm quite interested to hear who you think that is, by the way. I mean, one player I could pick out probably is, again, it's hard to pick out players this and be so harsh, but Football-Oranje is a good player, but isn't Ajax level, is he? And I think one of the big problems in Europe for me is in midfield. And Kenneth Taylor's a young up-and-coming player, but isn't quite good enough. Or maybe the player next to him, Alvarez, hasn't been as good. But that's for me where they're really lacking. It's in midfield.
Yeah, like Kenneth Taylor is a player that I look at, and he scores some goals, so he gets in the right position to score some goals, and he'll come up with assists now and then. But I watch him and I think, what is he actually good at? What would you say that makes him a standout midfielder over giving Jim more playing time, or going out and signing somebody else from another club? And I'm still not convinced yet that he's going to be a world class player. I don't think he is. I don't think, when you watched Ajax when they went to the Champions League final, you knew that Frankie de Jong was a world class player because what he was doing on the pitch. When you look at Kenneth Taylor, you're just like, okay, he's all right, and that's it. And then you come up against better teams in Europe and you get found out because he is just an all right player that comes up with a goal here and there. He's kind of like, I don't like to pick on him because I always pick on him when Netherlands plays well, but he's kind of like a Davy Klaassen, whereas he's there and then he'll come up with an important goal in there because he can get into right spaces, but for 87 minutes he won't do anything, and then for 3 minutes he scores a goal. It's that sort of player that for Ajax he's really good, or he looks good, but when you come up against better teams, he doesn't have the quality to really take you to that next level. And I think Kenneth Taylor is probably one of those at the moment. I hope he proves me wrong and he comes out to be an excellent player. But if you're looking at Netherlands quality players, I don't think he's that level. Compared to someone at PSV that we'll probably speak about in a bit, who looks world class, then you know what you're getting with him. But yeah, Divine Wrench as well. I think that he's had his criticism a lot this season. He just looks good at times, but then he also looks very average at times. And it's the same with a few of their buys. Calvin Bassey's another one. They've spent a lot of money on him. Yeah.
Do you not think he's going to come good though? I think he has a bit of potential.
He's got potential, but he's also got potential to fall apart as well and have a few clangers. And that's not what you want from somebody you spent so much money on, especially in the Eredivisie or when Ajax have ambitions to get to the Champions League knockout rounds. Is Bassey the sort of player you want? One that can look good in some games and then get terrorized in others. So yeah, I don't know if he is the answer yet. I think that coming the summer, I know that Kaplan's out injured and he might have been the answer, but coming the summer, I think they're going to have to look at bringing in a new centre back, probably a new right back, and then overhaul the midfield as well if they're really going to be serious about going further in Europe.
Yeah, that's the thing. So what do you do then with Kenneth Taylor? He's a homegrown player. He plays quite well, but are Ajax going to be ruthless enough to take that kind of player out of the team, like Divine Wrench? Are they going to be ruthless enough to do that? Taylor reminds me of like a mixture between Karel Eiting and Daley Sinkgraven, two players who used to play for Ajax. The kind of things they do on the pitch, but neither of them are playing for the Netherlands because they're not quite good enough. But they're both good players. Kenneth Taylor's a good player, but he's not, like you said, that level of Ajax player is going to really push on into the Champions League. I take your point about Bassey. Yeah, he just has one too many mistakes at the minute, but I'll see where that one goes. He's coming from some tough times in the media as well, isn't he? Like people have been criticising him. He has been making mistakes. But he's a good defender at times too. So we'll have to see what comes of that one. Yeah, let's that was a title race. And again, whilst we talked about Twente as well in the past, just don't think away from home they're quite strong enough. Lost to Go Ahead Eagles this weekend. I think that's them out of it, isn't it? But yes, there have been many twists and turns. A lots more to come, I'm sure. We'll touch upon it again in future podcasts. There's a few players though throughout the league, the Eredivisie, that have really been catching my eye with regards to Ronald Koeman's next Netherlands squad. Two of them are goalkeepers, and the other one's that young start PSV. Xabi Simons has been, well, it's been amazing, hasn't he? He's been getting better and better and better. Genuinely looks like a real player. I'm just so excited to see him continue that development. and really, really become quite a key player for Netherlands. He seems like an attacking spot that they might just be missing. Someone that's good on the ball and not just running with the ball. Because that's one thing. We've had a lot of quick players that have been good technically, but Xavi Simons could just do a bit of everything. And that, I don't know quite how it works. Like, will he play as a 10 as a right winger? He played as a left wing against Sevilla the other night and had some good moments in the game. Is he someone that you put in the Netherlands 11 at the minute, Mike, or do you think it's going to be a little longer yet?
For me, I would put him in, especially
Yeah.
if we're going to go for a 4-3-3.
Mm.
I'd I'd stick him in there definitely 100%. He's even as a winger, he's probably up there with the best winger Netherlands have at the moment, form wise. If you're going to stick him in as a number 10, he's up there with the best number 10 that Netherlands
Yeah.
have form wise. So if you're picking your players on form, why wouldn't you pick Xavi Simons? Because he's shown more than any other player that, in his position. I think what Koeman, the question mark that he'll have is we're coming up against France. Does he want to go with an experienced side against France, or does he want to give Simons his first start and possibly on the wing? I think he'd probably play him there. But yeah, I think it's exciting for Dutch football as a whole when you think about the players that have produced recently have been mostly centre backs that they do have a world class talent in an attacking position that's coming through now. And yeah, he does look like he's going to be a huge success. And for one part, that's worrying for PSV that if they don't, match his level, he can go. Um, but yeah, for me, I just really like watching him play. He's one of these players that you watch football for because he picks up the ball, he does something with it.
Yeah.
He runs at players, he can set up chances, he can score great goals. We've seen it all from him this year, and yeah, it's very exciting for Netherlands. But in terms of the national team, I don't think he was utilised enough at the World Cup. I think we saw
No.
him once for a little short period. Uh, but I think now is his time. I think that Koeman needs to realise that if he's going to go 4-3-3, and we need players to play on the wing, that Simons, he can't be ignored.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of goalkeepers stood out for me as well. Jasper Cillessen, I think now deserves a chance again, having done quite with NEC. And with injuries as well, Bilo's out, Pasveer isn't really an option anymore. Noppert has been injured. I'm not sure if he'd be fit anyway for those games. He might be, but given that Cillessen's been playing, you probably put him in the squad, and then probably does get picked to be first choice. I don't know how else you could pick. Well, maybe you can let us know in a minute. Maybe Mark Flecken. But the other goalkeeper to be standing out for me is Nick Olai at Sparta. Considered 4 against Ajax today. I don't think you'd say he was like a fault for any of the goals, but until before that game, he had the highest save percentage in the league. Kept more clean sheets. Well, he's kept half the games he's played this season in the league. He's kept his clean sheets. Someone again like Noppert in his 20s, like he's 27, is now standing out. Not saying he should be first choice, by the way, but comes into contention. Noppert came out of nowhere. Nikolai might have come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's funny to think that a couple of years ago it was Van Gaal. Was it last year? Was it? Yeah, it might be last year. It was Van Gaal standing on stage giving him the
Yeah,
goalkeeper of the year award for the second
that's
division,
what it
basically
is, yeah.
saying, yeah, he was like, oh, you should go to AZ because they need a goalkeeper. Who knows? He could then be an orange, but yeah, I think he's having a good season. I think that him and Silverson are definitely going to come into contention with in terms of the Netherlands. I think there has been a few standout goalkeepers. I think that if you look at Jeffrey De Lang as well, I think that he's come out this week and said that he thinks he's one of the best goalkeepers in the Netherlands, and he deserves a chance. Played really well today. And then you have the only other one that I'd mention is because you got mentioned by the goalkeeping coaches, and that is Bart Verbruggen of Anderlecht, because he's now first choice there. And yeah, when they interviewed the goalkeeping coach a couple of weeks ago, he said that he was one that he was very much keeping an eye on. So he might come into the squad after his injuries. But I totally agree with Silas, and I think that in terms of form, he's been excellent for NSA. And if you're going to go with somebody experienced, knows the shirt, knows the responsibility, then I think he does deserve another chance. And I think he definitely will be in the squad because there isn't enough goalkeepers to really fill it. So he's definitely going to be in there.
Yeah. Anyone else be standing out for you, Mike? I mean, those are the three players I've kind of had my eye on going. They could be. I mean, Silas has been picked before. Silas has been picked before. But Arlo could be a new name, and we could be seeing Tillison and Simons possibly starting for the Netherlands, given that chance. Is anyone on the periphery for you, or maybe deserves a start now from what you've seen, and not just in Eredivisie, of course?
Yes, there's quite a few that I think need to be called out. I think that Gertrude for Feyenoord,
Oh yeah, good shout.
um, he's really coming into his own now, and he was captain yesterday. He's so consistent. He can play right back. He can play in centre defence. I think that it's getting a bit silly now if he doesn't get a call up. But then you look at the centre back options that Netherlands have, and if you say, "Right, let's bring Gertrude in," who do you drop? And then if you drop, say, Timber for Gertrude or De Vrij for Gertrude, that leaves out Botman. So like, I wouldn't want to be Ronald Koeman trying to pick his centre defenders, but the, I guess the positive thing about Gertrude is he can play right back. So if you got
Is
Denzel
he now
Dumfries,
second choice right back, or is that behind Dumfries?
there's Dumfries who is attacking. So, but it depends. If 4-3-3, if he's going to play that way, 5-3-2, Dumfries starts. But 4-3-3, when you need that right back to be a bit more defensive, you're looking at Gertrude as a great option. And then you're looking at Kenny Tete, who is getting rave reviews in the Premier League film this year, um, who can't be ignored now as well. So, and then you've got Frimpong by Leverkusen, but then he's another one that's very attacking. And the only thing about Frimpong is that he can represent Ghana, and Ghana are pushing for him. So if he didn't get any minutes in the World Cup, Koeman comes in, doesn't pick him, it might be a case that he just decides, right, this is not going to happen. I've waited long enough. I'll go represent Ghana in Africa. So I'd like to see Frimpong at least given his debut in the upcoming games. But yeah, the defensive options that Netherlands have at the moment, a right back and centre back, are crazy. The amount of players that we have that are of a hugely high standard that are coming through is insane. I just wish it was in other areas as well. But in terms of centre backs and right backs, we're set for years. Then in terms of midfielders, I don't think he's ready yet. I can't see him getting called up yet. But Matt Sweefer of Feyenoord, I think, is having a really good few weeks. I think he's a player that Netherlands need. One that just picks up the ball, makes interceptions, does the tidy stuff. If you're getting somebody that can eventually replace Darun in there, I think that Weaver's definitely one that needs to be kept an eye on. And then we're looking at France for the two boys at Toulouse because Van den Boomen is continued what he was doing in the second division last year, getting goals and assists, and he looks like a very creative midfielder. And then you got Thijs Delinga, who we talked about a lot last season because he was scoring goal after goal after goal after goal for Excelsior. It took him a bit this season, but now he's on fire. He scored again tonight against Marseille. I think he has now 9 league goals he's got. But I think he's got 7 or 8 since the turn of the year. He seems to be very consistent at the moment, and that's playing at a high level. So if we're looking for a striker right now, I would look at, Delinga for me would be ahead of Brobbey at the moment because Brobbey's not playing. Brobbey's a bit part role at Ajax. So if you're going to go for somebody a bit different, I'll go with him. And the other thing I want to call out was Man United have started playing Wout Weghorst as a number 8. So
really bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they've seen Joe Linton for Newcastle and decided, oh, let's see if
Yeah.
this works for Wout Weghorst. So Koeman does have a lack of strikers. Memphis Depay's getting hardly any minutes for Atletico. Robbie's not starting for Ajax. Luke de Jong's been very hit and miss. Weghorst is playing in midfield. Leave. You have to look at Delinga. You have to decide if he's the right one because you got Xerxes not playing for Bologna. Boadu scored for Monaco today, but he's not, a starting striker for them. He's one that comes off the bench every third or fourth game. So, and Vincent Janssen is top goal scorer in Belgium, but most of those are penalties. So And I think that after the World Cup, I think a lot of people would not want to see him picked up again, even though
No.
if he does keep scoring in Belgium. So
Doesn't show a
the
step
Lingard,
forward, does it? If you're still picking him.
yeah. So I think the Lingard's definitely one to keep an eye on, because he's definitely an interesting prospect. I think he's 22, 23 at the moment. So yeah, he's yeah. There's a few players out there I think Koeman could hand first call-ups to. I'd be a bit worried if Koeman comes in, picks basically the same squad as the World Cup, and then adds in, say, Wijnaldum. I'd be like, okay, he's not really watching for these new players that are coming through. He's just going with the same old that he had before. Um, so yeah, I'm intrigued to see that. That squad can't come soon enough. I think the provisional will be very interesting to see who gets in there at least, um, just to get an indication of who Koeman thinks is playing well at the moment. Who's he watching? Is he looking at Feyenoord, looking at Pfeiffer and Geertruida? Is he impressed by AZ and some of the players that are there? Has he looked at 20 and maybe a guy small at left back? Who's he going to pick? So I think that's going to be intriguing for next month anyway.
If all else fails, we could pick a striker who's been doing really well for RKC Waalwijk. We could have a bit of Michael Kramer making his first cap, couldn't we? I would love to see that. Those that really love the league will know him and would love to see Kramer play for the Netherlands.
I think it's like when you used to get calls for Brian Linson to get starts. I think that's what that is.
Yeah, that sounds very similar, doesn't it, on this podcast? Yeah, so we've called out some people that could get a call up in about 3-4 weeks time, something like that, when we know a bit more about Koeman's thinking. Title race is absolutely on fire. I just want to touch upon Dutch teams in Europe. It felt a bit depressing Thursday night when I was thinking, right, this could be a chance for PSV or Ajax to get a good result either in Sevilla for PSV or Ajax beat Union Berlin. Back in form. Ajax don't think I had a shot on target the whole game against Union Berlin. And PSV just looked like a real step below Sevilla when they lost 3-0. A team that are mid-table, kind of struggling to stay up in the Liga. And Union Berlin, who have got a brilliant season in the Bundesliga, but it just felt like Ajax were nowhere near the kind of football that they've put out in the past in Europe. So, maybe we're speaking here on a Sunday. People might be listening to this about a week's time. And they might be going, well, one of them made it through. I feel like Ajax more likely to do it against Union Berlin. But the state of teams in Europe now, we've got Feyenoord probably won't take Europe too seriously with the league title on their hands. RZ, like we said earlier, could challenge the Conference League. Is their squad deep enough? We could really be talking about all four teams going out at the first hurdle in their knockout phase. That would be quite the sobering moment, wouldn't it, for us, if after last season, after the group stages was so good this time, to have had then maybe non-make it to a quarterfinal or something.
Yeah, I think it'd be disastrous up for the coefficient. The way that they did it last year, getting that extra Champions League place for the Netherlands, which will eventually come into fold, and I think it's next year. I think there's been a real drop off in quality in the Netherlands in terms of each side that's in Europe is missing one or two players in key areas, and it's really hurting them. Like PSV in the summer probably needed a centre back, and the best, and he has been playing well. I'm not going to say that he hasn't been playing well, but they went for Jared Brandthwaite, who isn't an experienced player. They went for a youngster that's like a reserve at Everton, instead of going for like a top quality centre back that knows Europe and knows how to play in a European league. Now he's been a good player for them, but then when it comes to
I actually think it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you think he was at fault for the Sevilla match?
No, not necessarily, but I just think that to go further in Europe, you need players that have that experience in European football, who are wiry, who know what to do. And if you've got somebody that's playing in Europe for the first ever time, I think he's been good for PSV, but is he Champions League level? We don't know yet. Whereas PSV should be aiming for bringing in players that are automatically Champions League level. They shouldn't be going for players that are playing reserve football forever. And it doesn't matter how good in quality they are. I think that's what the recruitment in the Netherlands needs to improve on. It needs to bring in players that are ready to play in Europe to progress us further, not go backwards and hope that these young players that they're bringing in from Premier League sides that are not playing there are good enough to take them that level. We saw on Thursday, yeah, they have players like Xavi Simons and Sangare, but then they can easily just go to Sevilla and get played off the park. So I worry that this week we're going to see both PSV. I think PSV are done. I think that they don't come back from that. Sevilla could sit back on Thursday, soak up the pressure. I don't think PSV are going to score 3 goals and not concede any. Ajax have a chance, but I worry that Union Berlin are in such good form that at home they'll grind out results, because it looked like Ajax were very frustrated on Thursday that Union Berlin played their game, and Ajax had no answer to them. I think at home it'll be kind of similar. So I worry that those two, because I was having Ajax as, I hope a team that would go very far in this competition, but if they go out now, then I worry that Feyenoord will get distracted by the league and get put out, and then that leaves AZ as the sole flag, and then I think they will go quite far in the competition, but until they meet somebody like a Fiorentina or West Ham, and then I don't think they have that quality that will get them through 2 legs. So I don't think we're going to see a Dutch club reaching a European final this year. I just hope that in the summer, the clubs use some of the money that they've gained this season to go out and buy some really quality players.
And they will do, because there will possibly be 3 places for the Champions League on offer, potentially.
Yeah.
So the fact that there are, aren't there?
Yeah. So you've seen it with AZ in the past, that they'll bring in money, but then they won't use it as much. PSV got a lot of money in January and then brought in Hazard on a loan. So they need to use some of this money to really beef up their squads, to make them European ready, and make them have the same quality that they can rest players in the league and still win the games, and then have them ready to go far in the Champions League. But I would be worried right now that the Dutch clubs will be all out by the time it gets to, say, the quarterfinal stage.
Yeah. I think AZ, you have to get some of the look of a draw. Conference League, they may well do it. It's a draw as well. Like if you get Man United or Barcelona, of course, one of them will be knocked out. You're in for a real tough run. But then also Midtjylland in the competition. So anyway, Mike, is there anything else Dutch football related you want to touch upon today?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it. The only other thing I'd be, you look at, I don't know if we discussed them in the last podcast, but Groningen look like they're heading down.
That's going to be a shocker, isn't it? I think they're going down.
Yeah, I think that for some reason, I can't remember when we did the last podcast, but they sacked their coach, give it to the assistant. The assistant's not won a game. They've not won since they beat PSV.
Big bad decision.
It's the technical director left. There's nobody making decisions. They just seem a club that is utterly rudderless. That's just going straight down, and nobody's there to stop it. So it's a shame for Dutch football. Such a team that's battling for Europe for years has found themselves now as second bottom in the league, looking absolutely hopeless. Where last time when we were doing the season, sort of halfway through preview, I was talking about Volendam being down and out. Now they look like they could survive.
Yeah.
Groningen are out. So I think that it's exciting at the top. I think it's going to be exciting at the bottom as well. I think there's 3 or 4 clubs down now that can get there. But Groningen right now, if I was one of their fans, I'd be absolutely furious at what's going on behind the scenes, because it's total mismanagement there. And it's not nice to see such a big club in the Netherlands going down. But then we looked at ADO Den Haag have done it, PEGS4 have done it, Heracles, Twente have done it and come back. So maybe they just need a total reset. A year in the second division, sort themselves out, and then come back. But
exactly, because that can really help, and you can bring through some of these younger players, perhaps make some money from that.
Yeah.
They actually have the quality to do it, but it's so mismatched with players coming out, players coming in. The January editions weren't bad ones really, but it's year upon year. I think it's a good sort of club to go, right, this is your warning other teams, because some teams have been doing it for years now, where they are stripping back at the cost of the club, getting weaker and weaker year upon year, thinking, well, we can stay up with this team. We can stay up with this team. No ambition whatsoever. And then ends up like Groningen, and they've been totally mismanaged this season. That's almost a different kettle of fish. But the past few years, they have genuinely just been trying to get away with not really buying very much, relying upon the likes of Pelle Pessi to come back to the Netherlands and be the captain of a club when he's barely played for Sheffield Wednesday. Who had a good season also in the Netherlands before he left. Like that's not ambition. That's preparing for a relegation battle, isn't it? Really.
Elvis Manu, another one. He's been playing in Bulgaria for years, and he comes back and he's expected to be the one that's going to keep them up with the goals. So, yeah, it's
not good enough.
No.
And then, of course, it could be Emmen and Cumber as well. The current bottom three that are the bottom three at the end of the season probably will change, but they just don't really seem to have enough quality unless Excelsior will get dragged into it. And then coming back up, we might have some teams, I think, in the Eredivisie that are those medium-sized clubs that have been in Eredivisie before. Last time I checked, Pek Zwolle, Heracles possibly coming back up. I don't be surprised to see a third team come up and beat the team in the playoffs because, again, there is that gap in quality. There's a good bunch of mid-table teams this year that are decent quality, and then there's the bottom. Well, the bottom three at the minute are pretty bad. So I'll be surprised if it was different than those three.
Yeah, you've got Pek Zwolle running 6 points clear at the top. You got Heracles second. Then there's a big gap to Almere and then VVV and Willem II. So yeah, I think that you're looking at Pek Zwolle coming straight back up with Heracles, and then it depends on whether they learn a lesson, because I think that going back a couple of years ago, you were criticizing Heracles for buying players from like the German third division. So
yeah,
depends if they learned a lesson from that and whether they realize that they need some quality to stay up and basically spend some money. So I think it's better for the Eredivisie that these clubs come back up and start performing to what they should be, just to improve the quality overall.
Yeah, it's always good. We want to see an exciting league. Of course, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, give it a like wherever you're listening. Comment along, especially watching on YouTube. Get involved in the comments below. What do you think of a title race? What are you thinking of the Eredivisie in general? Who are those players that are catching your eye in the Eredivisie or elsewhere that you want to see play for the Netherlands next month? You can, of course, follow Mike and I on Twitter. Twitter handles are there. And Football-Oranje, the website, has got much more going on to it over this weekend, over the coming weeks. The build-up to the Netherlands games coming up. Eredivisie is still battling on. I would be surprised if Feyenoord are dethroned. I've been saying it for weeks now, but they just look like they're on something special at the minute. If anyone disagrees with me, let me know in the comments. But it feels like now where Ajax and Feyenoord are going to be probably those two that are going to stick out at the top, getting some wins. But Mike, thanks for joining me. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. And more from us very soon. Bye.
Bye.